Hawaii, Monterey Bay, airing bi-weekly on KSQD 90.7, 89.7, and 89.5 FM. I'm your host, Mathilde Rand. My guests are Phil McManus and Amy Harrington of the Santa Cruz Welcoming Network. Phil McManus is retired after many years of work promoting human rights in Latin America and collaborating with nonviolent social change in movements there. He learned to speak Spanish 50 years ago when researching adult literacy projects in Mexico, modeled on the work of Brazilian educator Paulo Freire. Amy Harrington has been a resident of Santa Cruz County for 45 plus years. She taught in various school districts throughout the county as a bilingual teacher. Amy also worked as a court investigator for children in Child Protective Services. She served on the board of CASA, court-appointed special advocate, and as president of the local Jewish Community Center. She has advocated for the rights of immigrants and their families for many years. Welcome, Phil and Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Phil, can you tell us how you got involved with the Santa Cruz Welcoming Network?
Yes, in 2019, we were hearing all kinds of horror stories coming from our southern border, and a couple of friends invited me into a conversation just trying to think about what we might be able to do here in Santa Cruz in the face of what we were hearing was going on. And that evolved into a broader community meeting that ended up establishing what we now call the Santa Cruz Welcoming Network. Just trying to feel our way into what would be a constructive response, and the path that we ended up taking was trying to assist refugees in our own community get on their feet after having arrived here from wherever.
Mm-hmm. Amy, what about you?
Let's see. Well, during the first Trump administration, I was very concerned about immigrant rights and what was going on. And I had a friend named Kathy Citron, and she told me about this group, the Santa Cruz Welcoming Network, and I had just heard a broadcast about a woman who had immigrated during World War II and a Holocaust survivor, and at the end of that, she said the most important thing in her life was that it was the first people that helped her in this country. So that really motivated me to check out this group, and I met some fantastic people doing amazing work.
So, of course, listeners would like to know or like to learn more about what the Welcoming Network is.
It's an all-volunteer organization where we invite people to join together to, like I say, address the needs of recently arrived immigrants in our community. And we've tried to be cognizant of not trying to reinvent the wheel or do everything, but instead to connect new immigrants to existing agencies and social services here, of which we have quite a lot. Form teams to accompany individuals or families who have recently arrived and they're fleeing persecution or violence in some form, and then just see what their needs are and how we can help them to address them and get on their feet.
Santa Cruz is a pretty small town, and when people come here, we do not have many of the services that are offered in San Jose, San Francisco, through Catholic Charities, through Jewish Family Services. So there was a hole here for people, and I think the Welcoming Network was able to fill that.
That is truly amazing for a small town, because you help quite a number of people.
Yes. I don't know exactly how many we have right now.
Well, there's like 20 either individuals or families, total of probably 60 or 70 people that we're helping at the moment. And we try to, as I say, help people get on their feet, try to assist them over a period of a couple of years, and then hopefully by that time they move on, not needing so much of our assistance, and we can then turn our attention to new people who have come since.
Do you have a specific model you use to fill people in and connect them?
Yeah, so the model is a volunteer team. So as I say, we're all volunteer, no staff. And we have criteria for determining who we can accept because the need is so great and our capacity is limited. We got to have a screening process, and if they meet that criteria, the greeters team recommends them for accompaniment, and the whole group votes on that at our monthly meeting. But at that point, accepting somebody for accompaniment is also contingent on putting together a volunteer team, having volunteers step forward to offer to do that. And that requires a team leader and then just a handful of volunteers to assist any given family. And one of the miracles of the Welcoming Network is that each time over these 5-6 years now that a new family has arrived and we've gotten to that point, one way or another, the volunteer team emerges and coalesces to address their needs.
That is amazing. Then, of course, people may want to think of, how do people get referred to you? Because, they're not out in the street and they say, help me, help me. They get referred. How do they get referred to you?
A variety of ways. I just got a note today from a self-referral, a young person who had heard about us and wrote to us through our website. But normally it's from other community agencies or from the schools. Sometimes it's from lawyers that we are in contact with. It's a variety of ways that immigrants get referred to us through some other contact in the community like that.
Yeah, we have social workers in the schools. We have Community Action Board. Those are 2 referrals. And some of them, they're friends who are coming. But the interesting thing about the Welcoming Network is a lot of people think it's only from Latin American countries. And we represent, Phil, how many countries?
It's at least a dozen countries, several parts of Latin America, but Africa, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Russia. Who knew that there was such a diversity of refugees in our small county?
I remember because I had a friend who, for the longest time, several months, helped a young man from Russia. He was gay, or he is gay, and obviously he was bullied and probably even worse than that. He somehow came to the network, but he has been helping him. And actually, when he was gone, the young man was in charge of the house and the incredible yard and garden he has. But so that worked out really well. And I'm just wondering, you're putting volunteers together with people they don't know, and the people that they are new, they don't know the volunteers. How do you establish this connection, this trust?
I think it takes a while. Most of them have had a very traumatic time getting here, so the trust issue is a big one. I think letting them feel comfortable with us listening. I think that's the biggest gift we can give them.
Listening.
Is listening and not telling them what to do, but listening to what their needs are.
The question is a very good one, because imagine coming to this country having fled from traumatic experience and then being faced with the vagaries and the threats of our current immigration system, the way it works. And how do you know who you can trust?
Yeah.
So it's just what Amy said, that we get together, listen, and slowly build trust.
If I think about it, you're not only listening to them, but you're also connecting them with services, and you do things with them. So tell us a little bit about what the volunteer team does with and for the families.
Well, you can imagine arriving newly to a community, all the different challenges you would have. So food, housing, healthcare, legal assistance, those are big ones that everybody is facing. And so we have different kinds of resources, many on our website that are available to anybody to address some of those needs. But then it's like you need to get a driver's license and you got to navigate the DMV. You need to enroll your children in school. And it's not that they couldn't do it on their own, but it can be a lot easier if they have a volunteer who helps them. You have a child with special needs, and you have to figure out how to address those in the way our system works. Your taxes, what do you do about that? So just many, many different tasks that come up that we either can help with directly or we can refer them to organizations that address those specific needs.
When we first came on, there were lots of people were kind of in categories. So we had people who were retired nurses or educators or knew the legal system. And now we have so many volunteers that hasn't really been an issue, but it was a way that we could plug our volunteers into something that they were familiar with and be able to help the immigrants when they came here. Yeah, now we have over 100 volunteers, so that's...
Over 100?
Mm-hmm.
You said already some were retired nurses. But you also have, well, we talk about it a little bit more about the volunteers and how people can come and help volunteer. But it is, have you ever come across something that the family or the individual needed that you kind of had to think hard about how am I going to help this person?
Housing.
How?
Yeah, housing is
It's
so
the hardest,
difficult
right?
here. We have 4 or 5 families right now that are trying to find a decent housing situation, and it's just so very difficult. We can try to put them in touch with what's out there on the market, help them be aware of those opportunities. I want to also note that we've had several experiences of community members, like your friend that you mentioned, offering housing to the refugees that we're working with, which is the ideal situation, whether they do it for no rent or low rent. For somebody who's part of our network or connected to our network to take them in often works very well.
And we've been going to different church groups and temple and making presentations about housing to see if we can find a match. See if somebody has an ADU and they need some extra care, or they need gardening and they need someone. I know there are more places in Santa Cruz and more people, but to get them connected is challenging, and we're constantly doing that.
Now, I also understand that people come here and they need to request asylum. I know you have lawyers helping, but I also know from people that they actually drive people to their appointments in San Jose or wherever they need to go. Is that correct?
San Francisco, yeah.
San Francisco also?
Yeah. We do help people access legal representation. We can provide a little bit of funding support for that, but primarily we just help them make those connections and then also figure out the most viable way for them to do that process. Without getting into a lot of detail, you have to pay a lot for legal representation to go all the way through the asylum process. But if you break it down into pieces, it can be more feasible for the people. When you're in that system, you do have regular check-ins with ICE, either in San Francisco or in San Jose. And then you have your court hearings, and we provide transportation to those. And that's another one where every time that need has been put out to the network, somebody steps forward and says, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah. Well, let me tell the listeners that this is Exploring Monterey Bay on KSQD. My name is Mathilde Rand, and my guests are Phil McManus and Amy Harrington. And they both are from the Santa Cruz Welcoming Network. Thus far, we talked about how they got themselves involved in this, and it looks like after 5 or 6 years, they still enjoy and appreciate the important work that they're doing. We also talked about the model they use to assist recently arrived refugee families and how they get referred, and also what kind of specific things they do for the families or the individuals who are with the network. So let's talk a little bit about issues that need more of your attention this time. Are there any issues?
Before we do that, I just wanted to give a plug-in for Santa Cruz. You said what kinds of things has the community stepped forward in, and they give us tickets to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, to the circus, to all sorts of free cultural events that really, I think, enhance their experience of coming into the United States.
So what you're telling me is you're not only providing them with the basic needs, but you also try to acclimatize them to our culture. And that's part of the listening both ways.
The big thing now is addressing this new situation with the new Trump administration and the incredible pressure on immigrants in our society, and oftentimes the limits on respect for due process of rights. So the Welcoming Network hasn't taken the lead on the Know Your Rights work, but we've been very active in it. Many of the listeners will be familiar with the little red cards that have Know Your Rights basic information that immigrants can carry in their pocket to know how to deal with different situations where they might encounter ICE. That's really important work, and it's going on all over the country, and we have evidence of how it's been very helpful for people in those situations. There's also the Child Safety Plan, which is, I want to ask our listeners to think about that. We hear these stories now about parents being picked up at work or in their home and taken away by immigration authorities, leaving behind minor children. Imagine that happening with your family. The Child Safety Plan isn't a way to remove that threat, but it's a way to at least give everybody peace of mind that should that happen, there's a plan in place for what happens with the children, who will take care of them, which is obviously so important. Some Welcoming Network people have been at the forefront of organizing those trainings of people to help people write up their child safety plan, and then also have workshops where parents can come and fill out the forms.
And you can imagine that some of these children are U.S. citizens,
Right.
and their parents are not. So that creates a whole other level of anxiety because they have different citizenship.
Right. Yeah, I remember when I was a principal, no, actually I was a teacher in Pájaro, we had kids whose parents were taken away. And luckily, those families had lived in Pájaro for a long time, so the neighbors took the kids in. But of course, if you're a recent arrival, then you may not have that connection yet. So I really believe that safety plan, what do I want with my child when I'm being taken away? It's very important. How did you create and foster the Deportation Defense Collaborative for those who have filed for asylum?
Well, I'll give a shout out to a couple of our members who took the lead on that, Paul Johnston and Miriam Stambler, who were part of this whole process. We've been discussing about the critical need for legal representation. You can go to an asylum hearing without a lawyer. Your chances of being successful are close to nil. But to get legal representation is very expensive. There are places like the County of San Francisco, the County of Santa Clara, where the government has created a fund to help pay for legal representation for deportation defense. That means when you're applying for asylum, you have to go into court and prove why you should not be deported. And so they raised the question, our friends raised the question, why aren't we doing that here? And they convened a group that included some local immigration lawyers, the public defender's office in Santa Cruz, to try to have this conversation, and so some local agencies as well, to try to think about how we might be able to push our government officials to take similar steps here. And they've had some success already.
Yes, we have a justice fund, right, Bill?
Well, the Welcoming Network has its own. We set aside funds specifically for assisting with legal representation, but it's not nearly enough to cover somebody's total costs.
It's a tricky situation. You ask for asylum, but then you open yourself up to the knowledge among agencies who may not understand that you truly want to fulfill your responsibility of saying, hey, I'm here and I'm asking for asylum. How do you keep people's confidentiality, the information that you have, both for the families and the refugees as well as yourself?
By continually reminding ourselves of the importance of that. At each of our monthly meetings at the very beginning, there's a confidentiality statement that we read. We do collect some information that's necessary for us to do our work, but we keep that in a protected place. Try to be aware that we share information as needed, but not more than that.
We already talked a little bit about the volunteers. Now, I understand that you have volunteers of all ages. Where do they come from?
Yeah, we do. That's something that I really like about the Welcoming Network is when we meet once a month on Zoom, it's a lot of different age groups and a lot of different places that people are in their lives. We have people working at the university. We have people who just have come to town and they want to help, and they Google, I want to help immigrants, and the Welcoming Network pops up. We have families that the kids are in high school and they've heard about what's going on in the world, and they're like, we got to do something as a family. So we have families coming in, and we have people who have been working with immigrants and in social justice for a long time. It's a nice, well-rounded group of people. Don't you think so, Phil?
Very much so. I can't think of anybody that joined the Welcoming Network because they were looking for a social community to hang out with.
Right.
But it has been a wonderful community of people to get to know and to get to know about, and then to work together with. So we have like potlucks where we gather both the volunteers and then also an annual picnic that's volunteers and the families. Are really just lovely gatherings and opportunity for us to
Enriching everybody's life.
Yes, and like just last night, we had a family offering to cater Afghan food, and there were 100 orders. And when I went in line to get my order, it was just people in community, not necessarily people who just got by word of mouth. This is an amazing food, you should order. And so there was a big long line because there was 100 orders and they had never done that many orders. But everybody was just talking and having a great time and talking about the network or how did they get to this place. And that was really felt good.
So that actually then, listeners might want to know, how can they become a volunteer with the network? Where do they go?
Well, the first place is to go to the website, the Santa Cruz Welcoming Network. And
Is that one word? Santa Cruz?
Yes, it's all one word, santacruzwelcomingnetwork.com.
Okay,
There's
.com.
no .com.
Okay.
And I actually went to it, and it was very, very user-friendly. It had, would you like to volunteer, donate? It's very explicit, and we do get a lot of people coming through that way. We've gotten other people this year from the Good Times.
Santa Cruz Gives. But there was a really lovely article published in the Good Times that got a good amount of attention. And then there's a Santa Cruz Gives campaign at the end of the year for local nonprofits that we participated in for the last 3 years, I think.
Things that you do cost money. And so I said, is the community supporting you financially? And I know Santa Cruz Gives is one, and you're doing an excellent job. I looked up how much money the Welcoming Network is receiving through that, and people are very generous. And because I think they see the importance of it. But are there other ways that people are financially supporting you?
As Amy said, you can make a donation through our website. We are not our own 501c3, but we are fiscally sponsored by the Santa Cruz Hub for Sustainable Living. So if you want a tax-deductible donation, there are instructions on the website about how to do that. Or you can just send a contribution to, there's an address on the website for that. And we always are looking for and welcoming new volunteers. And we do have a good process for integrating people into the organization and into the work.
A few years ago, it was a kind of a loose system that, this family needs money for housing, so let's give them X amount. We now acquired more money through Santa Cruz Gives, and now we have like a point system that we have developed, and Phil can talk about that more. So it's fair because we were seeing that some families were getting a lot of monetary support and then other families were getting not as much. So we kind of put more...
Yeah, we just put more structure so the distribution of funding would be equitable and predictable. Not enough to take care of the family's needs, but enough to make a real difference for them.
Yeah. If the listeners want to contact you, how can they contact you?
So we don't have an office.
You have to go to the
website.
And it's very clear on the website. It says contact us, or if you want more information, we have a person checking that. And I think we've done a pretty good job of getting volunteers involved.
Right.
And some people just want to come to the monthly meeting we have once we've screened them, and they come and they decide that this is a great organization, but all they can do is driving. And then other people jump right in and say, I'll be a team leader. We have a whole gambit of people.
So if they go to the website and they want to give you a compliment about doing such a wonderful job in this program, they can just say, I want to tell Amy this, or I want to tell Phil that.
Yeah, there's an email address there. Let me just reiterate that the website is santacruzwelcomingnetwork.com.
I want to thank you both. I learned a lot of new things myself, even though I knew a little from my friend. So we want to thank you, Amy Harrington and Phil McManus from the Santa Cruz Welcoming Network. And you've been listening to the Exploring Monterey Bay program. You can contact them via the Santa Cruz Welcoming Network.
All one word.
.com. Yep. Santa Cruz Welcoming Network.com. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for having
much.
us.
Yes, thanks for having us.